So the test is going to look like this. So it will cover the stuff we did on measurement and the stuff we did on scale drawings. It is worth 100 points. That can make a huge impact in a good way or a bad way of your grades. So please make sure that if you have questions along the way as we're going through this, let me know. And then look this over one more time. I will record this and then I'll post it for you. So if you want to study anything, you can. Okay. Now let's take a look at the ruler that you see at the top of the page. Now the ruler isn't to scale, it's just a model so that we can do it. So if you take a look from 0 to 1, if you count, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 to get from 0 to 1. So that means it's a 16-inch ruler. The one on the test will be a 16-inch ruler. So let's go ahead. We're assuming we're starting from 0 each time, okay? And so A, if you count the jumps, we have jumped 1, 2, 3 16ths. Now the evens cannot, or the even numbers of jumps will always be reducible. 3 cannot reduce with 16, so just leave it 3 16ths. Let's count the jumps here. You might notice this spot right here is a longer spot. That does tell you where the half marking is, if that helps you. But take a look why. If we count the jumps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jumps. 8 out of 16. Oh, right here. 8 out of 16 is the same as 1/2. And the reason that is true is if you divide 8 by 8, you get 1. You divide 16 by 8, you get 2. Okay. Now let's take a look at C. C is also at a pretty nice marking. That's a 4th marking. So for the 4th markings, the 4th markings, you can tell it's a 4th kind of by that marking. So if you know that, that's fine. But if you count how many you go, here's 4, 8, that's 12 jumps. So that's 12 16ths if you were counting by 16ths, if you didn't recognize it. They're both divisible by 4. You do get 3 4s. Now, D is our last one that's still under 1. We've already know this is a 16th ruler, so we're 1 shy of 16 jumps. But if you counted them, there would be 15 jumps to that point. 15 16ths is the ruler. Now, again, like I said, the odd values, you can't, the odd ones, you can't reduce. So that 15 16ths, you can't do anything about it. Okay. Now let's look at how E is a little different. Remember, if you've passed the 1 marking, then you just do 1 and how many jumps after. We've gone 1 jump after, so that's 1 and 1 16th. 17 16ths isn't wrong. It's just we don't usually count, but from the last whole number we have crossed. And then F, you might notice this is the 4th marking, but there's 4 jumps. And always count the jumps, not the lines, because again, that could mess you up. So 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps. That's 1 and 4 16ths. Or you could recognize that's 1 and 1/4. G, it's not quite a 4th, but it is an 8th. We'll see that in a minute. But if you count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 jumps to get to G. So we've gone 1 whole and 10 jumps. But if you recognize that's 1 and 5/8, that's the best choice for that one. And then finally, if we keep doing this same thing, if you look at H, we are 2 shy of getting to the 16 marks. So it's 1 and 14 jumps if you count them, or 7/8. And again, look at the line. See how the H and the G line are the same length? That tells you they're both going to reduce down to the same thing, in this case, 8s. And then finally, I gets us exactly at the 2 mark. Okay. So hopefully you know how to do your
Thank you.
your measurements by now, okay? I want them reduced as much as possible. Number 2 says a rectangle is 10 by 12. Find the perimeter and the area. So remember, your perimeter formula is either 2 lengths plus 2 widths. That's an option. Or just add up all the sides total if you were like to walk around it. The area is length times width. So make sure you know those formulas for the quiz. Now, I like when I'm doing anything rectangular, or any shape they've mentioned, draw it. And you don't have to, I can't draw very nicely, but I can draw enough that I can place the values there. So let's call this 10, and let's call this 12, just because of the way I drew it. A rectangle, the 10 and 12 are pretty much reversible, so it doesn't matter where you put them. Okay. Now the perimeter, let's talk about if you just walked around the thing. If we start here, we would go 12, then 10, then 12, then 10. It's okay to add all those up. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you did that, you'll get it right. But if we apply the formula, let's call this the length and this the width. Again, they're kind of interchangeable. So if I do 2 of the widths, 2 times the width, plus 2 of the lengths, 2 times the lengths, that's 24 plus 20, or 44. But what would the units have to be for perimeter? What are the units for perimeter? Remember, that's a length, so you just use plain old units, in this case, inches. Let's talk about area. Area, we said, is length times width. Base times height is another way to look at it. And so in this case, it would be 12 times 10, or 120. I want units on these, so what would our units be for the area? Think about the fact it's kind of squares that cover that, and so we did a inch by an inch or square inches. So remember, perimeter, just use plain old inches. Area uses square inches or whatever the case may be, okay? Everybody go with number 2 and those formulas and applying those formulas. Okay, let's look at 3. It says a thin square piece of silver is 20 centimeters on each side. Before you jump further in the problem, draw a square. They told you it was a square. Draw a square. My great square there. And put 20 centimeters. And you can put it on all 4 sides if you want, but as long as we have the length and the width, like we saw with our rectangle, we're good to go. It says, what is the area of the piece of silver? So let's do that first. The area of a square is still length times width, or the side squared, because it's going to be 20 used for both of those dimensions. So in this case, you can either do 20 times 20, or you can do 20 squared. It's going to get you the same. So you decide. The answer is 400 square centimeters. Now that is the area. That answers our first question. But the second question says, if the silver cost $1.25 per square centimeter, what is the cost? Well, you're going to take your 400, and you're going to do that times $1.25. I think it's 500, but yeah, okay. And that would be $500. You know, and anytime you have a word problem, it's a really good idea to just take a moment and kind of look it over. Okay, I answered the question about the area. Check, I'm done with that. I've answered the question about the cost. Bam, I'm done with that. So always just kind of make sure you're doing what you should be doing. Everybody good with 2 and 3? Okay, let's go to 4. Okay, so we've got a room that's 20 by 12. It says find each of the following. So the first thing is the area. Remember, we're going to do length times width, because we're going to assume it's rectangular when they just say this by this. Okay, and so that's 20 times 12. Or 240. Feet
squared.
Thank you. I was struggling there. What to write down? Square feet is our units for that, because they said feet by feet. Now the perimeter, remember you can do 2 L's plus 2 W's. That's perfectly acceptable. You could just add it up and draw the picture. So if we have our rectangle here, we know this is 20 feet by 12 feet. So feel free to just do 20 plus 12 plus 20 plus 12. Think about if you were walking around the edge of it. But otherwise, we can do 2 of the 20s plus 2 of the 12s. Now, 2 20s is 40, 2 12s is 24, for a total of 64 feet. Okay, so again, making sure that you can apply your formulas, especially for squares and rectangles. That's the main formulas you're going to need. If there's anything else, I'll let you know, but if it's not on here, I didn't really include it. Now, just like the cost of the silver, this one is the cost of the carpeting. Anytime we are thinking about the covering of something or how many square something it is, we use the area number. So we're going to use this number we found, that 240, and then the cost will just be that square footage times $1.25. So 240 times $1.25 is $300. So it is $300. Now, so here you'll notice that we had to use the area information. Here, because it's the border in the room, that we're going to use the perimeter information. So make sure you know the difference of that. So in part 4D, it says it's 99 cents per square, take out the word square, per foot. It's 99 cents per foot. Please take out my little typo there. If it's 99 cents per foot, what would the cost be? Well, in this particular one, we have to use the perimeter information, right? Because perimeter is the border of the room. So you're just going to do 99 cents times 64. It's just going to be a little under $64. So it is $63.36. Okay? So remember, if they talk about the covering, if we want a tile for the floor, that would be area. But if we need a border for the floor, that would be perimeter. Okay, so make sure you're using the correct value. Everybody good with that first portion of what's going to be on the test? Everybody good with that portion there? Any questions with what we got there? Okay, so flip your paper over. Let's take a look at problem number 5. It says the Jones are buying the L-shaped house drawn below. They want to know how many square feet are in the house. It says first to divide the house into 2 rectangles by drawing a line. Now, there are multiple ways to do this problem. You can break it up here, so we have a rectangle on top and a rectangle on bottom. Perfectly correct. You can do that. You can break it here, so we have kind of like a little rectangle here and a little rectangle there. Perfectly correct. It doesn't matter, okay? Sometimes I'll look at, say, well, what information did they give me? So I am going to do the first one. I'm going to break it down right here. Okay. Now, again, it's totally correct to do the other way too. So if you did that, you'll get the same answer, a slightly different path. Okay. So it says, so we're done with part A. We've divided it. Okay. It says find the area of each rectangle. So first, let's do this one. Okay. Now, area of a rectangle is length times width. So it is clearly marked that the length is 55 and the width is 20. Now, sometimes you have to do a little logic to make sure in case a dimension is missing. But the area of this piece would be 55 times 20, which is, I'll call it area 1, is 1,100 square feet. Okay, that little, when it has just one little marking, that's a foot. Okay, now let's go to this little rectangle. And they've clearly marked that for us, which is great. Let's call this our length. and this our width. So let's call that area 2. So it's going to be 25 times 10, which is 250 square feet. So that's the area of each rectangle, and then that leads us very, very nicely to part C. Part C says, what is the area of the house, and label your correct units. Well, you just got to add those together, and that's 1,350 square feet total. And that's what they were looking for that part. Okay, so just make sure that anytime you have an irregular figure, break it into pieces that we can calculate what the particular areas are, and then go from there. Okay, do we have any questions about number 5? So you'll need to know your area and perimeter formulas and how to apply those. Okay, so that's number 5. Let's talk about circles, number 6. It says to find the area and circumference of the circle. Here's 2 other formulas you need. The area of a circle is pi r squared. Feel free to use the pi button on your calculator, but we are going to round each of these, if we need to 2 decimals. So 2 decimal places, okay? That's the area formula. The perimeter formula is for a circle. They call it the circumference, but it's just a perimeter. That is 2 pi r. Sometimes you'll see it's the diameter times pi as well. Now, all those things mean multiplication because they're all touching. So that's the pi value, 3.14, times r squared. This is 2 times pi times r, okay? Remember, pi, you can just actually physically type in 3.14 if you want, or you can hit the button on the calculator along that left column there. There's a little pi button. Okay, so let's find the area. They have told us this length here. That's our radius. So if you're coming from the center down to an edge, that's your radius. So the area is pi, that 3.14 value. Again, you can get that from that button, or you can physically enter in 3.14 times our radius, 6.2.
Good morning, Vikes.
Squared.
Homecoming Spirit Week standings are in. In 4th place is the freshmen with 1 point. In 3rd place are the sophomores with 4 points. In 2nd place are the juniors with 5 points. And in 1st place are the seniors with 41 out of 67 today with 8 points.
So if we multiply all that, we get 120.70 square miles in this case. And why? Because they used miles as our units. Okay, so that's how you would find the area. The perimeter or circumference, remember, is 2 times your pi button, or 3.14, whichever works for you, times your radius of 6.2. So you just multiply those. So 2 times 3.14 times 6.2 is a distance around of 38.94 miles. Okay. So make sure you know your circumference formula and area formula. I'm not giving you those. You need to know those. So make sure you know these formulas by heart. For the circumference one, you can use either variation, whatever. For this case, I think I give you a circle with a radius, so probably this 2 pi r is the best one to use. Any questions about the circle? Okay, so that's kind of our measurement portion of the test, and then it jumps to the more recent scale stuff. So the one that most people were having issues with on the test was just setting that proportion up right. Once you had your proportion set up, you guys were very good at solving it. But let's just talk about how we set it up correctly, okay? Let's take a look at number 7. It says the scale on a map is 4 centimeters to 125 kilometers. The distance from Bascom Elementary to Mrs. Hott's house is 25 kilometers. And it was. It was approximately. How many centimeters would it be on the map? Okay. So set up the fraction with your scale. Write down the units so that you knew where they went, okay? So write down the scale as a fraction and include the units. If on your left fraction you put centimeters on top and kilometers on the bottom, you have to put centimeters on the top and kilometers on the bottom on the other side. That's where you guys were getting mixed up. Okay, not all of you, many of you got them great, but I'm just saying. So it says, what is the distance on the map in centimeters? So that is our unknown. So the fact that it's 25 kilometers to my house, that's kilometers or kilometers, however you want to say it, which is down on this bottom area. Okay? So you gotta make sure you set up that proportion. Once you guys set up the proportion, you guys were great. So if you set it up right, you're good. So now we're going to cross multiply. 4 times 25 is 100. 125 times x, I don't know, is 125x. Now when we get to that point where that 125, what do we have to do since it's attached to the x? You're going to divide, and we've been seeing that every time. So we're going to divide by 125. And then for the most part, these throwing it into a calculator and getting a decimal is going to be fine. And remember, I need units, okay? So please make sure to show your units. And so our answer would be 0.8 centimeters. So hopefully that makes sense to you there. Any questions about number 7? Yes. Okay, so now let's do number 8. It says 2 cans of Red Bull contains 68 grams of sugar. So you can either put 2 cans or 68 grams like that, or you can put sugar on the bottom, however you want to write it, okay? How much sugar is in a case, which is 24 cans of Red Bull? So that means we need to know, since this is sugar, and this is cans, the 24 is cans. It has to go in the top. The question is how much sugar? That's our unknown. That's our x. So make sure you're setting it up right. Because again, like I said, once you guys got the setup right, then the next piece was very good. And so if you cross multiply, you're going to do 68 times 24, which is 1,632. And then that's 2x. So what are we dividing by? 2. And so we're going to divide off that 2. So that says that the whole case contains 816 grams of sugar. And make sure you're answering the question, okay? So if 2 cans contain 68 grams, 24 grams contains 816 grams of sugar. And I did look that up. That was how much sugar was in a Red Bull. I was trying to be somewhat accurate. Okay, number 8, sound good, the way that we solved that problem?
Yeah, 1 second.
No problem. So make sure you're setting up your proportion. So on this side, if you do cans over sugar, this side has to be the same order. If you did sugar over cans on one side, you do sugar over cans on the other side, and it's going to work. So make sure you're consistent on however you set up the one side. The other side is consistent. Okay, so there's number 8. Flip your page over. We got one more page to look at, I believe. Yep. Let's take a look at number 9. It says you should give 50 milligrams of medication for every 10 pounds a person weighs, or the weight of a person. How many milligrams of medication should be given to a 130-pound person? Okay, so we're going to set up our first with our fact. That's like our scale on a map. We need to give 50 milligrams for every 10 pounds that someone weighs. So pounds is usually abbreviated LB. Okay, you could write the word pound if you wanted to. So let's read the question again. How many milligrams? That word, how many milligrams, that little phrase tells us that our unknown is on top. We put milligrams on top. We need to put milligrams on top on the other side. So they go together, okay? And then we've got 10 pounds, and so 130 pounds goes here. So we should have pounds on the bottom, pounds on the bottom. So this is the scale factor in a way, and then this would be what we're missing. What two things are we going to multiply first? What two number components are we going to multiply? What two numbers are we going to multiply? What two numbers do we multiply to get where we want?
130 and 50.
You got it. So we're going to do that 130 and then 50, and then that 10 times that x, because remember, we're always going to cross multiply. And so 130 times 50 is 6,500. And that's going to equal 10x. And as we saw, that coefficient we divide off. The answer is 650 milligrams. Make sure you put a unit if a unit was given. So we would have to give that person 650 milligrams of that medication to give that medication correctly. So proportions are used a lot in carpentry. Proportions are used a lot in medication and making sure you're giving patients medication correctly. Everybody good with number 9? So the last one on the test is a geometry application, okay? Let me kind of get this out of the way here. Okay, let's take a look at number 10. So we've got two triangles. They have marked them as similar. That means that we can set up proportions about their sides. That's the main thing to think about. See how they go together? ABC order does matter. It goes with RST. So we know, let's kind of mark things on the picture, and you can kind of mark it maybe with your pencil. AB and RS go together. AB and RS. See how that has that X there? Now the only other side I know here is RT. So our RT, see how it's the first one and the last one? So just go to the other one. Where's the first one and the last one? Well, RT has to go with AC. So that's a good way to kind of use the letters to help you what goes with what. Okay, so I go big over little equals big over little. That's one way to do it. Or you can put all of the big information in one side and the little information on the other. Okay, but I'm going to go big over little that goes together. So to make my scale. So my scale, you can do little over big or big over little. It doesn't matter. Consistency is all that matters. So 3 over 1.5, that's my scale. That's the one I know. And then I'm going to go 4 over x. Okay, so look what I did again. I went from the big to the little. Big over little. And then I went big over little. And then once you set up the proportion, you guys are great. You know how to solve them. So the scale factor here would be 3 to 1.5. What can we do to double so that, or what could we do if we double 1.5, won't it become a whole number? So like think if you have $1.50 in your pocket and you doubled it, you're going to have $3, right? It's going to be something a lot nicer. So when I see that 0.5, I just double each piece and then try to reduce it. What's the number that goes into 6 that also goes into 3? What's the number that goes into 6 and also goes into 3? 3, right? What that means, we could divide each of those pieces by 3. But see how it's a 2 to 1 factor? If you give me 3 to 1.5, it's kind of right. So if it's a 4-point problem, a few of you did that. You gave me that on the, I need the scale reduced. So I only took 1 out of the 4 points off. So, you know, just so you know. And then the value of x. Now let's solve this proportion. Okay? So we would do 3 times x. we would do 4 times 1.5, which is 6, divide by 3. We get that x is 2. Now, they did have units on there, so include the units. The units are centimeters, okay? Makes sense? Okay, so please make sure you have your name at the top. I don't want to collect these because I want you to study them. You have a test tomorrow. It looks like this. So now use your Chromebooks, open up Google Classroom, take pictures of the 3 pages we did, and get yourself some points. And then if there's anything you need to review, this video will be posted, so it's a great thing to review. So test tomorrow. You got this.